What's the meeting note, February what?
I don't know if anyone's talking, but nobody has a microphone on.
Yeah, I got mine on. Okay, so we're reconvening the meeting. And to go back to the tabled item 6.2 regarding the dust control program, there's a motion on the floor. Can you read it, or do you want me to kind of hammer through it?
So I don't know if you want me to have moved by Counselor Wallach. Okay, so moved by Counselor Wallach that the community of the whole to recommend to county council to bring back a revised policy 3405 to county council on February 11th, 2025, with the addition to have the availability to purchase additional calcium at cost.
May I?
Yep.
May we ask for the additional calcium to be dust control product, so we're not tied to calcium only in the future,
Dust control product.
please?
Mr. Chairman, are we to assume these are friendly amendments?
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Moved by Counselor Wallach. Committee of the whole will be recommended to county council to bring back the revised policy. Addition to have the availability of purchase additional dust control product at cost.
Okay, do we need to have this reread, or can we just vote on it? Counselor Gerlach, you okay to?
I would recommend, Chair, that you read it so that the councillor knows what he's voting on.
Okay, can we have the motion reread, please?
Moved by Counselor Wallach that the committee of the whole recommend to county council to bring back the revised policy 3405 to county council on February 11th, 2025, with the addition to have the availability to purchase additional dust control product at cost.
All in favor? Opposed? That's 4, 5, 5 and 3. Carried. No, he voted against it too, and then. Oh. Okay, so. Counselor.
I can leave one off and leave it till the next time, but there's one. I have
Okay.
one motion,
Okay.
And that would-
Holland wants to make a motion.
and that would be to recommend to council to update policy 3409 in pursuant to policy 3405.
3409.
And if for background information, 3409 is dust control on gravel haul roads. And it references policy 3406 that is rescinded. Therefore, just to update it to the current policy.
All okay with that?
I mean, most of us haven't seen the information on this, so I'll be voting opposed just because I haven't been able to see it in advance.
If we could bring it to, like, again, it's a recommendation to council for that update, so it would come to.
My understanding, Mr. Chairman, is 3409 refers to a policy 3406, which was rescinded.
Right.
And the actual, you just want one number changed in 3409, so it refers to policy 3405. It's a typo that you would, it's an old one. It's,
Yeah, I can't see anything. Nothing's changing in the policy. It's just a number. right?
Right, 3409, Mr. Chairman, refers to a policy which doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Correct. 3406 was rescinded when we adopted 3405. So we just didn't update the other policy with the new policy number.
Right.
Mr. Chair, through you to the admin, wouldn't it not be normal practice for admin to just to automatically make the updates like that with a successor policy? Like, those are such a basic level of housekeeping. I hate to think that you would have to write up a decision report for council. Is it not normal practice to just take successor policies and update them, flush them through?
It absolutely is, Counselor Hall. There's a motion on the floor. Honestly, in the interest of good governance, we got no problem making this correction and bringing it forward.
Okay. Motion's on the floor. So all in favor? Opposed? So that's 6 and 2. Right? 5 and 2? What am I missing here? Who is 5 and 3? Oh. Okay, 5 and 3. Motion's carried. 5 and 3. Motion's carried. So, okay. Whew. Where are we at? Let's go, let's go to water rates. 6.3. Do we need a convenience break? We got 6.3. And need a break? You're good? Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's move on to 6.3 and water rates. So who wants to take that one on? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report, here, CEO Beck. As you mentioned, essential questions of council. There are 2 essential questions that council needs to determine before we can move forward. The first one being, does council wish to remove away from a cost recovery model of utility rates to a subsidized model? And 2, what is the level of subsidization of water rates that council would like to be at? One example would be, so that our water rates are lower than our urban neighbors. So if it's okay with council, I'll just throw my opinion out there as in yes, to number 1, that, we look at, I guess our utility rates, being as a subsidized model, I guess is the way to put it. Whereas if we have any shortfalls in revenue, that it would come out of the general taxation is where I sit there. And 2, what is the level of subsidization? So definitely that we are either comparable as in equal to or lower than our urban neighbors. I'm very much in favor of that. Again, with any revenue shortfalls that come out of general taxation, and that we have to consider rescinding bylaws 011-2020 and 014-2020, as those are old bylaws that are still sitting as active that do not, as far as I understand, do not apply to any of our current bylaw with regards to water rates and sewer rates. And the other thing I would like to, for council, if they wish to consider, is to lowering the minimum. As we look at our neighbors, we end up with, I believe, it's 2.5 cubes per month for the town. And Boyle has a distribution fee that they charge as being $15 a month, which would be, according to their rate, which is $4.99 a cube, would be almost 3 cubes minimum if you kind of look at it as a minimum rather than a distribution charge. So it's a couple of those things that I would really like to have that conversation, but that's where I sit with the answers for those couple of questions until we get into further discussion.
Okay, Counselor Hall. Your mic there, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder. Even though I think, when we made the decision, council made the best decision we could, given the advice we had. I'm of the view that we did miss the mark on the changes that we made previously to water rates. And so I would still support a cost recovery model for high volume users. I really believe we should consider, like some of my colleagues, a reasonable subsidized amount on a reasonable quantity of water for county residents and for their domestic use. And to me, it's critical that we're subsidizing residents and domestic use. And to help make cost of living more affordable across the region, I've taken to heart advice from the CAO that we subsidize many things, and on residential use, having a bit of a subsidy for water seems reasonable. I do not support subsidizing water for industry or for non-residents, and I think there's some mechanical pieces that we'd have to figure out for how do we do that. I think asking administration to give us their best advice on the minimum would be prudent. What should that be? We know our neighbors have flat rates and other stuff. And I don't think we should set our mark sort of tied to the others, but set something that's right for us. And that number might be something that is just lower than other places, or a number we think is reasonable. The system does have some cost to operate, and we have to recognize that, but on some reasonable quantity of water for Athabasca County residents. So that means not coin-op, I could get behind a lower rate supported by research from administration. And I think given all the other cost increases and things we see, we need to right. We need to make right on this adjustment that we've made and bring it down for domestic use.
Thank you. I totally agree with that. Counselor Cromwell.
Thank you. In one of those days that I write down on my calendar, I agree with Councillor Hall, and he had many of the words that I wanted to use. First off, let me be clear. I've yet to be able to get behind or understand how it costs us more money to get the water down the pipe than it does for the commission to make water for Grassland and Wandering River. Our cost is higher just to go through a Water for Life primarily funded pipe than anything else. I agree that we need to subsidize water rates for county residents, and I've actually brought that up before as an idea that we have a different rate for non-residents. I agree that industry, aside from our water hauling companies who are often hauling on behalf of county residents, should not be paying a subsidized rate. I agree that our minimums need to be lowered. I was thinking, and I believe in our discussion before, around 5 cubic meter. We could go lower. I would be happy going from 10 to 5 cubic meters for a minimum water rate. But I would like to see water, at no more than $5 a cube across the county. I think that is more than reasonable. We have been given costs by previous director of how much money our water system is taking. And then in discussion, well, where did you get that number? How did you figure that? We were unable to get real answers. We were unable to know where the cost is coming from. In all fairness to administration who took this on with new staff, think what we have written for water rates is probably not accurate when you literally dissect every line item and figure out where our rates are coming from. I have a very hard time with that. So I'm very happy that we are looking at being fair, and we are looking at helping our county residents. We are looking at lowering that rate. We're talking about lowering the minimum that they have to get, while our non-users pay that bit of a premium for being out here. That little bit extra for the corporations that are making money versus Joe ratepayer who's out there. I think we're definitely on the right track, and I'm very happy that we're having this conversation.
Okay, thanks for that, Counselor Wallach.
I'm not for subsidizing. I think we should have a minimum cost requirement or recovery because we have infrastructure that we have to pay for. We have to look ahead to the future and understand that we're in positions we are now because the council at the time didn't take that step to put money away for reserves. Let's be honest. So I don't think we should have a subsidization. I think we need more information on what our actual costs are to come back and what the actual usage is on average for people. So if it is 5 cubes, cool, let's make that the minimum. If it's 10, then we make 10. If that's the average across the board, I think we need to know the stats and not just assume what we think we know. I would like to see some more actual numbers come before we make this decision.
Just to give you an answer to a question ahead of Councillor Arif Holland, in a building that I know of, a single person and another person who is only there about half the time, their average is about 7.5 cubes a month.
Actually, our reserves sitting in capital for water equipment and lines, at the end of, this is, end of 2024, I guess. With the move that we made of the 156,627, according to this that we received from administration, we're sitting at $1,943,925.50 in capital reserves.
Okay. So our new water line costs us $16 million. What are we gonna do when we have to replace
I
everything?
don't think we have to replace a whole water line all at once. I don't think that's something that has ever really, that I know of, I don't think that we would ever do. I think we would do the proper maintenance, that we would avoid it to degrade so bad that we would have to replace the whole line all at once. So I'm wondering what is a proper amount for a reserve cap on water equipment and lines, as we are aggressively adding to the reserves every year. We had, I think it was 42,000 jumped to 66,000, is now jumping to 107,000, which all increases the costs of per cube. We're also have been including in the cost depreciation, where our depreciation, it may show up in our expense column under that particular water expenditure statement, but when you go back to your summary, it is put right back in. So for me, I too want to see the costs. I did pull up from 2023, March 14, when we were given some information from the previous director on a 7-year average. And so as I broke down where those figures came from, I was able to apply them to 23 and 24. And again, this is just my figures. This isn't from administration or anything of the sort. But when you look at our costs for 2023, being that we had a surplus, our cost without depreciation is $2.6635 plus the cost it would be from the commission. So add another $4 to that. And then again, when we look at it from 2024, just the budget, I don't have the actuals, just the budget, the county cost would have been 3.6111. So for me, we are definitely have room to move down in what our cost recovery is, as well as if we were to add in that if there's a shortfall in revenues, that it be covered through general taxation, that wouldn't impact taxation. It would be so minimal, you wouldn't even know it existed. So to be able to properly and fairly, I guess, charge people for water across the county, lowering the cost would be very easily done. The minimum would also be easily done. It would just have to be something that we talked about to figure out where we want to be. Again, the town 2.5 and Boyle, we can equate it to 3 cubes a month. And the other elephant in the room, whether we like it or not, but our current Collinton levy is tied to that water rate in the minimums. So in our water rate bylaw. So if we mess with the minimums, and we've got to be considering how we're going to handle that situation, and also to make sure that people understand with regards, because the levy is sitting here in our agenda, that it not only impacted the water rates, it's impacted the sewer rates because they're paying less than what everyone else is. So we're subsidizing Colleton to a degree already, and with water and sewer. So there's quite a few things that I would really like to see come back as well. And as mentioned, you know, we need to provide some examples to administration as to how we would like that to look. I don't know if we can narrow it down 2 or 3 different calculations we'd like for administration to bring back. I don't know where everyone else is sitting, but I definitely see a drop would be a great thing.
I know when we discussed this before, regarding our water rate utility bylaw, it came back with about 3 different scenarios. Would administration be, I guess, up to bringing back a few different scenarios of different water rates? Or do you have enough information to bring something back? Or we'd like to see the minimum dropped and I guess we need a number on how much you want to subsidize, or if we can get as close to cost recovery as we can. What's administration's point of view on that?
Well, I'm happy to go there, Mr. Chairman. I'm not hearing a whole lot of consensus on the issue so far, sorry, but, and that's the point. I mean, we could go away, but we're gonna be, if we go away and work on these scenarios, now we could just dredge up those ones that were prepared before. That's very easy. But we want to make it worth everyone's time. If we're not sure that a majority of the committee, which is council, recommending to council, wants to see that, then
Well, I know myself, when I look at all the scenarios from that was given to us in this package, every municipality has a lower minimum rate. They have a lower minimum rate, whether they do it by just a flat charge of $28, $30, whatever, and then you pay for the water that you use. And I would be okay myself with dropping the minimum rate, and then we read the meters anyway. So if you get let's say a minimum rate of 4 cubic meters, let's say, whether you're there or not, it's going to cost you minimum 4 cubes. And then you pay for whatever water you use beyond that. That should be enough of a deterrent to get the heck out of the shower and quit using so much water, right? Because you're paying for it anyway. So that's the way I look at it. Drop the minimum and it'll be a lot easier it'll drop the rates. Councillor Wallach.
Like I said before, we're making a lot of assumptions here. I would like to see the numbers come back of what the actual costs are for our water, and then what the average cubes per household is. And then secondly, like, how do we determine industrial use? So like commercial use, like car washes and hotels, are we subsidizing them? Is that what we're looking at? Or how do we determine that?
So we've talked a lot about minimum, and maybe we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. If we're trying to provide a discount to the domestic users, perhaps there is a flat rate for the folks who have a meter that needs reading, and something like that reflects the baked in something to help with the baked in costs of meter reading. But what about instead of a minimum, you set a maximum at the discounted rate? So rather than saying you must buy, or we'll charge you for 5 to 10 cubes, what if we said the first 10 cubes of water are at this discount, and set it at a number that's big enough to encompass, most families of 4 or 5. And then anything over that goes at a higher rate. And that way you don't have, you can get around the industry's charges, and because even if we give industry the first 10 cubes at the bargain rate, the guys that are heavy users, that's where you start to pay. And that way, if I want to water my cattle from the truck fill station, I can just pay the higher rate. And we end up being able to provide every ratepayer a uniform rate that's at a discount up to a certain quantity of water. And then after that, it goes to a higher rate and you get away from a bunch of administrative hassle.
So just for an example, thank you, I was looking for the word. I have a family of 5 with 3 young children. We use about 12 to 13 cubes in an average month. So just as a number out there that I can tell you. So like I said, I thought the first 10 cubes would be more than fair. That definitely encompasses a lot of people that don't have the water use of 3 young children.
If I may,
Yeah, go
and I appreciate what you're saying, when it comes to having, you know, a tiered system. It's great in an urban situation. The town has it. So the town, for example, up to 18 cubic meters, it's 5.376. And then after 18.1, it jumps to 5.53 and over 45 jumps to 6.09. So what I look at as a cistern operator that has water delivered, they're delivering just under 15 cubes. That's stretched out over 2 months. So how does that work? When you have, you know, you're not going to ask for half loads, right? That's going to cost you a fortune. So for me, I struggle with having a tiered rate in a rural setting, being that when cistern users have their water trucked in it, how would it apply? It would be very different. So it'd be very difficult for me to figure out how that would work. I don't know in the accounts that we have set up currently and how when they go in and punch in their number, you know, the first 10 are at this and then the next 5, well, it's unfair to residents who live rurally. I guess if we want to throw some scenarios out there of what we would like for administration to come back with, I guess it would be, as you mentioned, we need to know what our costs are, right? We need to know what that looks like. I would ask that depreciation come out of that cost, being that it's zeroed out on the other end anyway. Of course, reserves are included in that cost. I would like to see personally our reserves drop a little bit because it's until we know what's a decent cap, I think that they're a little bit excessive. I would even recommend dropping 2024's budgeted amounts, but that's another story. I would say that for me, I would like to see the rate no higher than our neighbors. I believe the highest rate is 5.376 and Boyle is 4.99. So I would like to see something in between those 2 rates. I would like to see a minimum. This is just like I say, me personally, just throwing stuff out there just to give us a scenario that we can work with. I would like to see a minimum of 3 cubes that matches Boyle's, or instead of a minimum, it'd be a distribution charge that we don't tie minimums to anything. It's just a distribution charge. When you get it, you get it. But again, how does that impact somebody at a truck fill, right? So we still run into that situation, right? So there's that aspect of it. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything much more other than that if there's a revenue loss that we look at it through the general taxation to make up the difference. So pretty much what we have, only just a lot lower rates and a lot lower minimum. And except it's subsidized through general taxation for revenue loss.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Pretty much everything I feel is said, like you said, we have a huge amount of reserves there. I am definitely for subsidized model for sure. And to Councillor Wall, we need to see that math and how it all plays out, first of all. And then I think, you know, when administration can bring some real hard plausible solutions, and I agree with a 3, maybe 4 cube minimum as well.
Councillor Hall.
If we get back to, like, before we start arguing positions, what are we really trying to accomplish? And it seems like to me there's consensus around the table that we want to get better rates for the typical domestic user. And if we start off without its finish, then we have to get into the, well, how do we do it and how do we deliver that better rate to them?
Right.
And, but I think, you know, in terms of what research do we want admin to get? I think I've heard we want to know costs. I'd like to know costs with and without depreciation, because I do have a different view. I think we need to maintain reserves because $1 million is nothing. It's diddly squat on our scale. And so at least we need to have some advice from admin on that. They may recommend we go for a little more, a little less. I know the Water Commission has just done, you know, many thick volumes of reports on the condition of our water lines across the county, and, you know, where we might expect work to be needed in the future. So we can have a reserve study built out of that. I think it would be helpful to know kind of what is the typical use as well. And admin is the best position to tell us that. And then, you know, around the table, we can decide, maybe we do want to round up. Maybe we want to round it up to 15. Because at some point, it just becomes a political decision about how much do you want to subsidize? And if we say we want to subsidize the first 15 cubes a month, then we can make that. But you know, the foundation, I think, is we have consensus that we want better rates. I mean, my view is that I'm not even sure that I like the minimum amount. The distribution charge is fine because someone in a truck fill won't pay it, but someone with a meter and all of that can pay that, and it doesn't have to be crazy. But the bigger piece is how do you design a system that's simple, relatively easy to administer, and doesn't involve lots of complicated calculations? And that's why I say flipping it to a maximum might actually be more straightforward, where your bill just the first, pick the number 15, 5, 20, whatever is at some bargain. And then once you cross the threshold, and that way, the folks who are heavy duty water users, they too are potentially residents. I think it's supportable to subsidize that little bit. It's really the guys that are using 20 and 30,000 cubes a month that I can't be prepared to go to a ratepayer and say, we're subsidizing, buddy, somebody's water hauling to an oil field camp, because my guess is they're not discounting the rate to the oil field camp when they charge it. So anyway, that foundational level first, and then how do we get there? And that's there's probably a couple different views on how we get to that thing, but
That's the hardest part of this, is because we are rural. What's happening is when you look at our urban neighbors, they subsidize the water to all their people that they provide water for, and they stick it to their bulk water sales. And both urban neighbors do that. And that's what, and they can do that because if you don't want to pick up water from them, go someplace else, get the water someplace else. We 51% of our water that we sell goes through the bulk water. And I really don't, a lot of that water is actually going to people's places. It's going to rural places. It's not going to camps. It's not going to and also agricultural use. Huge amount. Yeah, but they are taxpayers too. They need that water for spraying. So it's not like it's going to commercial. They need that water for spraying. It's a fact. So that's where the difficulty is. How do we subsidize water going into our hamlets and still subsidize water going for our rural use? Because 51% of that is going through rural use. And I don't know how to do it. Councillor Cromwell, yeah.
Thank you. Again, I can almost agree with Councillor Hall that maybe doing a maximum would be a very smart way to go. But my question through the chair to administration, when we were talking truck fill, which is like the chair said, the majority of our water sale, um, you can tell from their billing whether they're local or non-local. Is that correct?
I believe so, Mr. Chairman, if they've set up an account, yes.
So, so right there, that actually works. So if you have a local billing address and you know that your box number 1234 in Rochester, box 234 in Grassland, box 345 in Wandering River, that you're local, well, then you get a discounted rate. If your billing address is Fort McMurray, St. Albert, Edmonton, well, obviously you're not a local here, and we can make that work. It is definitely something that we can do with ease. If you don't have an account and you're paying coin, you pay a higher rate. If you're local, you get an account.
Councillor Gerlach.
Don't forget my address is a Boyle address.
Councillor.
I am a county resident.
Councillor Gerlach.
I don't know, like, I don't know why we're so worried about possibly subsidizing industry or whatever. We aren't shy, or we don't have to be shy when we're tapping them for taxes on the M&E and whatever. I mean, we're 30% below our neighbor in Lac La Biche, who have double the assessment we do. If we're worried about subsidizing water, let's just touch them for a little bit more money. But how does that a car wash run in Grassland, or the hotel where they said their water bill's 14,000 a month or something? Like, that's how do we create anything? How do we have anything work? This thing is water for life. It's water for life, which means it's kind of more important. I'm sure that the multiplex will collapse long before the water line does. And you know, like, I don't buy a new tractor today and tomorrow I start saving for the next one. Usually when these things are near the end of their life, in the latter years, you prepare for it, you take a debenture and you pay for it over so many years, or you get help from the government with grants. If it's $60 million, we're not going to build a new water line and shell out $60 million right away. I don't think just doesn't work that way.
I don't want to respond.
Councillor Wall.
So if nobody else caught it in the presentation, they do 2,000 rooms a month at that hotel. So that's a lot of water that they're using, and they're making money. Secondly, I always go back to the service level thing we did with me and Rob went to one, and there was a town that they planned for 25 years to do one street a year and replace the water line and the sewer line and repave. We have water lines, sewer lines, and pavement in our hamlets that are old, and that's going to cost more than $1 million. We have to consider that. So either we start coming up with a 25-year plan to start replacing that, because that water line is what, 20 years old, at least. So it's going to start happening, and it's going to cost us a lot of money. We're at that end of life cycle with the water lines at a lot of these hamlets. Like, we have to start thinking about that stuff.
Just with regards to, as you mentioned, with industry, as you mentioned, we are able to gain back what they're paying for the heavy taxes that they pay for commercial. Commercial pays a higher rate. We are supposed to be attracting business here, not saying, oh, it's too difficult to do business here. And this is the problem that I'm seeing. Grassland has made it very clear. It is extremely difficult to do business here. It's extremely difficult to invite people and expand business because of the cost to do business. We shouldn't have that problem. We gave a subsidy to our small businesses. Why can we not make sure that our large businesses are given some sort of a break as well? And for me, yes, they may be making money. That's great. That means then that we have a good business in our community. We shouldn't be making it more difficult for them. And yes, I agree that, yeah, we need a plan to make changes and upgrades and all of those things to our water lines. But we wouldn't do it all in 1 year. It wouldn't happen. And so that's where we have, as you mentioned, a plan is a great idea. But as far as industry camps is another example, those are still people that require potable water. You know, we cannot make it so we're saying, hey, you know, just because you don't live here, we're just going to make your life miserable. I don't agree with that at all.
Well, I guess the biggest thing is if I could cut in here just for a second, we need to come up with something to give to administration to say to come back with. Probably to the next committee of the whole regarding water rates. What do we want to give to administration to come back with some information? Because this could go on until 6 o'clock tonight, saying that, yes, we want to drop their water rates, but we don't want to do it by this and by that. We need to come up with a consensus here. Councillor
I'll
Townsend.
be fast. Are we not also waiting for a big infrastructure master plan, including all of that kind of stuff? Like,
You mean
was there
the
not
level
some-
of service review?
Was
or-
there not something that we?
Sorry, are we expecting an infrastructure master plan that would encompass underground services?
Have we started it? Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of anything that's been started and, you know, my
No.
Saturdays and Sundays are open, but, you know,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, here's what I heard.
Okay, thank you.
Here's what I heard. And if I didn't get anything back, I would try to bring back something like this. Council would like to see maybe the true cost for 2025, as if you're developing a utility model from scratch. You wouldn't mind seeing that.
True cost, yeah.
True cost,
Give us a true cost. Give us the
true, yeah.
rational.
Minimums, you'd like to examine minimums, maybe $10 is too much, or 10 cubes is too much. So you'd like to examine that. You might want to examine maximums, but I get a different one, industrial truck fill rates. This is not too complicated, Mr. Chairman. Lac-La-Biche County does it today. And you can see it in, I think I attached their utility rate. So they've got it figured out. So we just have to phone them.
Right.
And how did you guys do it? This is not rocket science. Reserves, what are reserves? What would they be? I don't know. We don't have a full plan for this. So we'd have to just, for now, you'd have to just pick a comfort level and say, this is what we're working towards, but it's not going to be based on science. That's for sure. You wanted to know the typical user.
Yeah, how much a typical user uses.
Yep, typical user.
Yeah,
And then maybe present us 3 scenarios with varying levels of subsidy for council to have a look at.
Yeah.
Maybe one includes the minimum, maybe one doesn't. At least you've got some straw models that you can pick apart. Maybe council could narrow it down to 1 or 2 or something and then play with those.
right.
Is that okay for a
Yeah.
start?
Yeah. And then, and I don't want to bring it up, but what about the commercial end? So a commercial meaning like commercial in the hamlets, not the commercial hauling to a rig camp or whatever.
Oh,
Commercial in the hamlets, like for the Ramadas and the car washes and that, is there a commercial way of doing that?
Some of that I think is around the policy level. What are we trying to accomplish? What are we trying to do? And if we give everybody, you know, like figure out what we want to accomplish first, and then we can
Okay,
just, because, you know, in with that, it's, do we want to charge ag different, like ag and industry, non-residential, like there's all those.
okay, we
Those
can
things.
discuss that after.
So-
Sure, that sounds great to me. If we could get some of those numbers like that, and then we could sit down at another committee of the whole meeting and when would you want to presumably have that done by? So we're not throwing you out
2028?
of.
Sorry. You know, we'll see what we can do for February, but.
Yeah, February, March.
Do we have the infrastructure? Like, as you think through, here's an idea for council. I guess for me, one of the questions would come back is, do we have the infrastructure to make that happen? So if you say, well, the billing will be based on a PIN pad number that you type in your account number or whatever. if we don't have that equipment at all the fill state, like,
No, Mr. Chairman, it's a great point. We just had that discussion again yesterday or today. No, the days are blurring. Like we have to get away from coin fills, so we do have to move towards a pin pad and account system or a point of sale. We've got issues, and that we really need to address. They're all doable because I believe we have communication at each truck fill because of SCADA.
Yeah.
So it's all doable, but these things are overdue. Like most people have gotten way away from coin op. You're just asking for trouble, Mr. Chairman. So
Yep.
the question of technology and other things, yes, it's absolutely linked. So
Okay.
Councillor Hall makes an excellent point. I just want to, looking at our budget, remember that total expenses are around 900,000 or I think we had it a little higher this year, 960. So if you were talking about a 10% subsidy, it's only $96,000. If you were talking about a 20% subsidy, it's double that. We're not talking millions and millions of dollars. I think it's the point of it, but in true dollars, it's not a huge number, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And we're just trying to make it fair. That's the only thing. So Councillor Gerlach.
And the thing is that it's an absolute need. There's no question about it, that it's an absolute need that has to be provided. And the one thing I would like to see in there also, like, do we have a uniform price now? I'm so confused with where this has gone. Do we have the same price in Wandering River as we do everywhere else? And
Well, with that tax levy, it just messes it up in Collington.
because we should have a
On the
uniform,
books,
we
but-
should have a uniform price.
Yeah, currently our uniform price is not uniform. We wanted a uniform price, but it didn't end up that way. So with Collinton, it's $3.20 a cubic meter for 10 cubic meters. And the rest of everyone else is $5.13 a cubic meter. And 10 cubic meters is the minimum. That minimum is tied to the levy. So what that does is it zeroes out the Collinton levy, which is why it's the discounted rate. It's to zero out the levy. Not only does it zero out the levy, our sewer rates are based on 35% of your water bill. I think
35.
it's 35. I'd have to dig deeper,
It's lower than that down in Rochester.
but yeah, it is lower in Rochester. So basically, yes, here it is, 35% of the actual monthly water billing. So when we have a discounted rate in Collinton, it also discounts their sewer. Whereas Grassland and Wandering River don't have that. So by removing the levy, it puts everyone else back on an even,
can we
Playing
focus
field.
back on the, I worry that we're gonna get off track when we get into the levy.
well, the levy is
discussion. We've
part of
already
the agenda. And I know it's a contentious subject, but for understanding purposes, not only will the changing the minimum impact the discount to zero out the levy, if we just get rid of the levy, it zeroes everything out. Everybody's on the same playing field, but that's an answer to your question.
Okay, so administration has give us an idea of what they can bring back, and February, March sound okay? Is this gonna be long, Councillor Cromwell? Because we gotta move on here, buddy.
Nope, not long at all. Just to Councillor Gerlach, when we were talking about the different rates there, I just opened it up here. Yeah, so when you're talking Grassland and Wandering River, we pay that Aspen rate plus an additional $5.13 a cubic meter, putting water for our residents that rely on a truck fill at $9 a cube right now, just for that to be in comparison.
Yeah, no, that was discussed already, so you betcha. Okay, and then so do we need a motion to bring that back? CO Beck, you'll just bring it back?
No, Mr. Chairman, we'll bring it back.
Okay, perfect. We will need a a motion to rescind bylaws 14-2020 and bylaw 11-2020.
And if I may, those are, I just think they got missed in the last cleanup when we were rescinding all the old bylaws under the water rates. There's one that refers to a discount long time ago that probably don't have any overdue accounts, so I don't think it would impact it. But yeah, those are just two old ones, just to recommend to county council to have those rescinded.
Can we make can this come back as with a copy of the bylaws? I just really am troubled to be asked to vote on rescinding a bylaw that's not in front of me.
That's
I
right.
don't object to doing it. I just,
Okay.
I want
Right.
to see it.
That's
And-
right.
And so let's get it back to committee of the whole first, not surprise
Well,
us
we
with
can
it.
actually, if we can recommend to county council, we can look at it right in the council meeting and have that over and done without having to bring it back to another committee of the whole to do another recommendation. So if we recommend it to county council, you'll be able to review it at that time. It's just a recommendation. It's not something that we would do until council decides.
It's okay, so you want to make the motion to recommend to county committee of the whole Counselor or Reeve Holland recommends the committee of the whole recommends the county council to rescind bylaw 011-2020 and 014-2020 at the February.
An upcoming meeting, it's not.
Yeah,
great.
yeah, an upcoming meeting of county council. Sound good? Okay. Do we need to reread that again? Okay. All in favor? 2, 3, 6. Opposed? 6 and 1. Motion carried. No. No. Were you opposed, Councillor Cromwell?
I was in favor, sir, if I didn't
Okay,
click the
yeah,
button.
that's what I figured. 6 and 1.
Thank you.
Okay. And the information with the administration is they'll bring that back. So we're good there. Moving on to. 7.1. Fire rescue standards, operating procedures, SOP policy. Forward the draft fire services standard operating procedure. So. Councillor Jamzik,
As recommended, please.
as recommended. Recommendation to forward the draft fire services standard operating procedures SOP policy to the up and coming regular county council meeting for approval and forward policy 9102 fire rescue standard operating procedures SOP policy to an up and coming regular county council meeting to be rescinded with the current standard operating guidelines being transitioned from the policy to directives. Okay, do you want me to reread that again or? And so any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, you in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Okay, so that would be 6 and 1. Motion, recommended motion passed. Moving on to 7.2. This is the survey from RMA. And Councillor Anderson, too bad she wasn't still here, but understanding this has gone long enough. So do we want to, I think what was going to be asked is, do we want to do this survey as council or do we want to do it member by member? Or do we want to do it both? And we can do it either or. Yeah. You just gotta put into the survey question if you're a member of, you're doing it on your own, or if you're doing it for on behalf of the municipality. What do we want to do?
Well, if we want to save time, everybody can just do their own if they choose to
Does-
respond.
Does administration?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would think having counselors do it themselves is actually more impactful than trying to do it as a group. It is. I mean, you get 9 votes on the topic instead of 1.
Yeah,
So
okay, that works for me. We could do this from home. And that, so, okay, on that note, I think if all the business has been taken care of, I don't think we have any other motions to push anything. Meeting adjourned.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks a lot.